How often have you asked a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? Seems harmless enough, right? And we love their answers. But do we need to stop asking this question and start asking a better one that helps them see they're a part of a really big plan? Hey, this is Becky Fisher, and if you're looking for God-inspired ways to raise a supernatural generation in the home and the church to follow Jesus with all their hearts, then subscribe to this channel and you'll be well on your way. Daydreaming is fun and it's healthy, and every child should be encouraged to do it. And I personally love asking, especially small children, what they want to be when they grow up, because you get this delightful little glimpse into their amazing minds and personalities. But after working with kids for almost 30 years, I've started observing some growing characteristics that might be concerning. It all really has to do a lot with cultural trends that I don't see changing anytime soon. It's this whole mindset of it's all about me. This day of selfies and self-absorption and self-promotion. It's in everybody, our politicians, our movie stars, our singers, and so many more. It's complete self-focus. And what is the biggest result of all? Well, there may be more than one answer, but a big problem with self-absorption, besides selfishness, is it produces inner emptiness. People become aimless, and aimless people are lacking true purpose and a cause to live and die for. Am I right? If you agree, hit the like button, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them now. This is not to point any fingers at any one group. But since the coming of the millennial generation, we've been more aware of an increase in narcissism and self-focus. Time magazine has called them the me generation. And it needs to be noted that every generation has its own characteristics, both good and bad, right? And as a baby boomer, I will cast no stones because we live in our own glass houses. And I must be fair and say that there are some pretty impressive millennial parents with some pretty impressive kids. So we can't paint them all with one giant paintbrush. But all I know is what I read and observe. And let's face it, today's trends and cultures drags all of us into the mentality of it's all about me, regardless of the generation. So does this have anything to do with this harmless question that we ask kids about what they want to be when they grow up? I believe it does. Now let me explain. What really got me to thinking about all this was watching the chaos and rioting and violence going on in the streets of America these past few months. Now, I don't want to get into the bigger issues of racism and defunding cops and all of that type of thing. Those are completely different conversations. But hear me out. But it really amazed me how quickly these young people just latched on to a cause of Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ movement and even what Antifa was leading. And it was like these young people were just a tinderbox, just ready to be set on fire with a cause. They found a purpose to completely give themselves over to. Now here again, I don't want to get off on how this happened, how our educational system and social media and the news have been grooming them with certain ideologies since they were little, and that definitely plays a part. But the truth is that all people are designed by God to want to have a purpose. They're created with an inner hunger to be part of something bigger than themselves. Narcissism and self-absorption can only bring happiness so far, but in the end, it's empty. Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA said, "Fulfilling your personal destiny and living your dream is not a cause." And here's the point I'm wanting to make about kids dreaming about what they want to be when they grow up. If the church and Christianity does not give this generation a greater purpose than themselves, they will find a cause and a purpose outside of Christ. It's been a well-known fact in America that with each successive generation, there is a greater detachment from Christianity, the church, Jesus Christ, and the Bible. For the last 3 generations, Researchers have been telling us these are the least churched generations in American history. And finally today, they are truly a post-Christian generation. Now, I remember when President Obama came into the office and he publicly proclaimed that America was no longer a Christian nation. I got so mad. I just cringed. I just gritted my teeth. And part of the reason was I suddenly realized it was true. And it had happened right before our eyes, as so gradually that we just didn't even see the obvious. And once you remove God and Jesus Christ from the picture, you remove the foundation for inner peace and a view of man's role in God's great big picture, His plan and His destiny for all mankind. But more importantly, within that, the plan and destiny that lets every human being know they were designed for a purpose to give them a future and a hope. Now, if you agree, type "Yes, it's the truth" down in the comments below. I've told people for years that we can either let the world teach our children to save baby whales, or we can teach them to save souls. The choice is ours, but they will give themselves over to a cause that's greater than themselves. So we can ask our kids what they want to be when they grow up and feed into the narrative of it's all about me and what I want, or we can flip the narrative and ask them what they think God wants them to be when they grow up. Because we Christians are big on telling people God has a plan for their lives. So why not begin planting that seed in the minds of a child from their earliest days, when their imaginations are the most active? That life is not all about them, that they were created for a greater purpose, that they have a destiny, and if they follow hard after God and seek Him with all their hearts and listen every day for the voice of the Spirit and obey it, that they will reach that destiny. Now, some of them will know from the time they're little what that is, and others will discover it as they grow and explore life. God actually revealed to me when I was a 7-year-old little girl what His plan was for me. But without anyone to help me interpret what I was seeing and hearing, it came out like this in my thoughts. When I grow up, I'm going to be a lovable little grandma that all the kids in the neighborhood love. Now, don't you think that's a little strange? Why didn't I think that I would be the grandma that all my own kids and my own grandkids would love, right? Why the kids in the neighborhood? I didn't know how to interpret that at that time. And it wasn't until I turned 50 years old, the age of a grandmother, and started Kids in Ministry International, which is now established in 12 nations, and we've impacted well over 30 nations and counting, that I realized I had become the grandma, and the kids in the neighborhood were the children of the world, and they loved me. Now, people ask me all the time, how did you get here? And I honestly have to say I did not know the plan from the beginning. I had that one glimpse, but I didn't know how to interpret it when I was a little girl. I just woke up every morning and did my best to listen for the voice of God for that day and obey what I knew to do at that time, and I ended up here. Now, I can look back and recognize that everything I learned throughout my life, every skill I acquired, every job that I took, prepared me for this day. It came out of an inner sense of destiny that I couldn't explain, that came from following the voice of God. Now, somebody shout glory. That's what I want for my child. Then type it in the comments below. And if this is ministering to you, hit the like button below too, and don't forget to share it. Our kids need to know there is a plan and a purpose for them that will give them a supernatural cause that is huge and much greater than themselves. And as they discover that plan, they will not get distracted with the lesser plans that lead them away from God. Children today want to be challenged. This was one of the ultimate discoveries that educators and clinicians made as they had to deal with the most coddled generation in history. While self-focus crippled many of them in that generation, for others, it created a hunger to be challenged. They were tired of getting pointless trophies for doing nothing but showing up. They no longer wanted to watch the movies on TV. They wanted to be in the movies. They no longer wanted to watch the gymnasts and professional sports players in the Olympics. They wanted to train for the Olympics themselves. And spiritually, they were the reality generation. They really wanted to know God for themselves. They really wanted to hear His voice. They really wanted to feel His presence. They really wanted to see signs, wonders, and miracles for themselves and do those great things we'd been telling them about. You know, you can do all things through Christ. But then without realizing it, we marginalized them from doing those things until they grew up when they're no longer interested in the things of God. Ask your kids and grandkids, what do you think God wants you to be when you grow up? Then tell them to start praying and preparing and planning for it now. Don't wait till you grow up. Tell them to practice their God dream every day. This generation and every generation will go unsatisfied unless they find the plan and purpose that God has made for them, and it's only found in a deep relationship with Jesus Christ. When you ask a child what they think God wants them to be when they grow up, it makes them stop and think beyond themselves. It makes them look inside and realize God made them for a purpose. And every time we ask them that question, we need to send them to their little prayer closets to seek His face for an answer. They need to grow up with the possibility that in the back of their minds that today they might want to be a fireman or policeman or a school teacher, and that just might be what God has made them for, because those can be true callings from God. But they need to stay open to the idea that there might be something greater than what they've thought of, a cause to live for and even die for. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. If you got anything out of this, let me know by leaving a comment below. Tell me how old you were when you first realized what God's plan for your life was and what you were called to. Then check out my fantastic, amazing, one-of-a-kind children's church curriculums that teach kids how to hear God's voice and follow Him. You'll find all the links below in the description. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time for Equipping Kingdom Kids.